There's a cue. Do you have more music? Thriving in the age of distractions is hearing the music inside the noise. When I imagine forward into futures, all of them but the worst are noisy places. Highly interactive, densely woven, layered, and syntactical, and as in any web of chatter, lots of lossy transfers, errors, and patterns of intelligence. Too bizarre or fast or vast for anyone to notice or register or as noise. Stand back far enough and it's hard to ignore the curve. From the biofilms that dominated early Earth and made no more noise than gaseous bubbling to the launch of rockets and atomic bombs. What's lost in this reconfiguration of the networks of the biosphere? Shipping traffic interrupted whale song and the baby turtles misdirected by hotel lights as they mistake for the moon. Humans aren't the only ones confused by the proliferation of new stimuli. Mockingbirds in my old Austin neighborhood were uncanny in their reproduction of car alarms, the new normal of an auditory environment with 30% fewer birds and insects than there were in my childhood. A famous lyrebird in the Adelaide Zoo learned to perfectly mimic the sounds of construction equipment. Meanwhile, urban pets go crazy from the matrix of mechanical noises humans ignore or can't even hear. Noise is our constant companion through time. While I write this, my 3-year-old daughter bangs on one thing after another around the house, joining her infant brother, punctuating my brief intervals of research with squawks and stomps and sweet earnest questions that nonetheless chop my attention into task-switching slices. These children of a turbulent decade sure love to rock the boat. The invitation here in writing this is to scry by looking into the surface of a pond. My distorted reflection foretells a future of surprise and puzzlement, non-linearity and eruption. This is the perennial refrain of people getting old. For centuries, kids these days have enjoyed music that unsettled elders whose ears have been trained on simpler harmonic structures, more consonant, predictable material. The story can be traced back at least to the Catholic Church's banning of the tritone in the 1600s, a dissonant interval it called the devil's chord. Yet in the words of historian William Irwin Thompson, evil is the enunciation of the next level of order. The noise may be a harbinger of coming phase transitions, much like the way a pot of water boils at the boundary between water's liquid and gaseous states. Noise, like water, arrives in waves, some small and some so great they threaten the fragile structures we erect upon the shores of the unknown. The internet is certainly a noisy place, but it has precedent. There are robust analogies between the meaning crisis of our time and the rift created by the printing press in catalyzing an evolutionary arms race between pamphleteers, as well as the Protestant Reformation and the 30 Years' War. As early as 1974, Thompson recognized the need for academics to move beyond the form of the lecture and into what he called Wissenskunst, the play of knowledge in the age of serious data processing. A more contemporary term for Wissenskunst is mind jazz, and appropriately so. We can pinpoint the origin of noise music as simultaneous with both jazz and the First World War. While the narrative of modern progress and its tidy march of betterment was torn apart by artillery bombardment and the clear horizon of the Enlightenment's confident rationalism disappeared behind a wall of poison gas, those at a safe distance from the trenches found new creative schools to acknowledge and accommodate the gap between a naively real out there and the actual jumble of our sensorium. Of course, you can't even say for sure that what's just noise if you don't know how to read the signal. Covert signaling abounds, and whether all of the microwave background is actually Big Bang residue or encrypted alien communication is and will remain an open question. There are physical limits to communication and epistemic bounds on what we can even recognize as intelligence. For all we know, we're surrounded by ET chatter. Something similar goes on at every scale we care to look. Biologist Andreas Wagner links the evolutionary utility of play to the way gene regulatory networks employ noise as a way of jostling themselves out of stuck points, out of false optimizations in an ever-shifting adaptive landscape. Likewise, the fool in the king's court or the heyoka at Sundance both keep society from settling into maladaptive complacency. When mass extinctions disrupt the Byzantine symbiotic networks of mature ecosystems, fine-tuned specialists take the hit and lose messy generalists. Misfit organisms that seemed forever out of place suddenly come into their own and help reboot the entire food web. It pays to keep these clowns around. Similarly, Eric Hull hypothesizes that dreams function to prevent overfitting of the brain to its conditioning, allowing it to generalize from past experiences to novel future scenarios. It would then fit that not only jazz and noise music, but the myriad other dreamlike forms of modern art, from surrealism to cubism to combinatorial music, emerged when we began to lose the plot, to realize that the story the modern world had been telling itself was just a linear projection drawn from biased sampling. In times when you can't trust the score, it's more sensible to stop following the conductor and play by ear. Education at the edge of history can't rely on the authority of educators brought up in a world that no longer exists. Pedagogy for digital natives discards rote memorization and emphasizes curiosity, lifelong learning, collective intelligence, and the power of search. Noise becomes music, music becomes noise as the listener changes. As John Cage put it, the act of listening is in fact an act of composing. Our brains construct our sensorium in an act of sophisticated interpretation. Beyond the age of 5 months or so, we see and hear what we expect to. Babies see things adults cannot. Noise is a way of getting out of this cage. Oracle, since Delphi used it to notice patterns, we would ordinarily shut it out. Deliberate noise is a signal, the transmission of intent. At what point does a conversation become part of the burbling stream of banter? When does the burbling resolve into sense? When my son rattles the fence, the hanging decorations jostle, its cause and effect, the noise is a signal, an accomplishment. I take him on a walk around our neighborhood at bedtime, strolling around a few blocks, major streets that issue constant engine noise. There are coyotes here too, and when bundled all together by our auditory processing, my son is lulled to sleep. Noise is a blanket, and we wrap ourselves in it. Thanks.
Let's hear it from Michael.